to all of you. The program that we have today, the session that we have today is in a way a continuation of the work that we have been doing on what you might call at one level as a East and West integration, and the other one, science and spirituality. So we have had several programs in the past which have covered diverse subjects, neurosciences, quantum sciences, chakras and energization, Ayurveda, psychology. And that is what we are going to have, which is one of the reasons why we have retitled this program from advanced webinar to something called the future of coaching, which is not just about going into the coaching competencies and the coaching framework as have been decided by the various credentialing organizations, but much more than that. What is it that coaching can actually do, where we can bring in other science and art subjects into coaching, and how we can enhance our capabilities as a coach, and how we can benefit people who are being coached. So that's a prime motivation with which we are moving into this space. And when I had done a session, I think soon after the neurosciences, we did one on chakras and energization and stuff like that. So Ayurveda, I think, and somebody said, one of the persons in the audience and other people wrote in to saying, could you have something in astrology? And I really didn't know anyone who I could call upon. And one of the people sort of referred me to Pradeep here. And I'll introduce Pradeep in a minute. So this was the expansion of that subject matter of science and spirituality that is bringing us into the discussion about the astrological aspect of it. Astrology is a Vedic science. It's not some kind of predictive hocus pocus that everybody thinks it is. It's not that stupid newspaper column that comes out every Sunday about how your romance is going to play out and stuff like that, the sun signs and the moon signs or whatever. It's just total nonsense. Absolutely no basis to it. Perhaps some of them have been good, like Bejan Darwala, who died recently, but most of the others are complete fakes. But there are people who are total professionals in this space. My own parents were astrologers, and I have grown up with a background in astrology. At a point in time, I wanted to study astrology, and I gave it up as being too difficult because it was far more mathematically focused. And I am an engineer, and I had a big background in mathematics, but even I found it extremely difficult. Permutations, combinations, and possibilities and probabilities and all that stuff. And but today, with computerization, there's a lot more that is being done. It's ideally suited for computerized calculations as well. And I've come across some amazingly brilliant people who in their mind can just, if you tell them what your birth date is, they would be able to do up a chart and figure out at the time when you were born what the planetary positions are in, and so on and so forth, which you totally boggles the mind. But at another level, and the astrology that we are going to talk to today is not about predictive astrology. In a sense, it is predictive, but it's about your behaviors and self-awareness and so on. And that's what Pradeep is going to talk about. But at the same time, there is an integration between what our individual self-awareness and consciousness is and the larger cosmic and collective consciousnesses. And in a different forum another webinar that I'm conducting at this point in time on Create Your Future, I had occasion to say this, that, and I don't remember the exact link, but you can look it up. If you refer to David Bohm, who is one of the greatest quantum physicists who ever lived, sort of in the same stature as Albert Einstein. He was a person who actually linked the general relativity theory of Einstein with that of quantum mechanics, which is about subatomic particles. So in a sense, he was a guy who connected the microcosm with the microcosm, which was considered to be impossible mathematically. And then he introduced this through a concept called wholeness and implicate order. And the wholeness and implicate order was about a concept called enfoldment, in which he said, everything in this universe at various levels enfolds everything else that is smaller. ultimately to the individual level. So there's a very, very direct connection between who we are as individuals to what nature is in a collective sense. And that's really astrology is about. It's about connecting the individual consciousness with the larger universal consciousness or collective consciousness in ways which are extremely mathematical, which are extremely scientific. And I leave Pradeep to explain the details. I'll be having some questions to ask him, connecting up these different sciences, and also about the connection between deep Jungian psychology in terms of the unconscious beliefs and so on and so forth, how they are actually reflected in the way that our astrological charts can be drawn up. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What could be our potentials so that we are able to actualize those potentials and so on. Just to go back a little bit, Pradeep is a professional banker. He had a background in IT before, and he has a management background. He did operational management. So he's not someone who is one of those people that you might think is as an astrologer who's a pundit kind of a person who's going around trying to give you some predictions, charging you a fee of 100 rupees for 3 sessions and stuff like that. He is taking it as a very, very serious profession, as I know many, many people are actually, and he's actually conducting classes on a regular basis, teaching professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, and others in astrology. So he has an extremely solid background in terms of professionalism. You don't expect a banker to be able to lend to people based on predicting whether they will return the money or not. They are far more sensible than that. So he's not coming from that space. But I will leave you with Pradeep at this point in time. He's based in Bangalore, and at a later point in time, we'll try and get him to put out his link to sort of his programs and things like that, if those who are interested in joining. He is working with one of the most celebrated astrologers, professional astrologers in India, B.V. Raman. He contributes to peer-reviewed articles globally. So he is in many ways a professional expert in this space, just like as we might call ourselves as professional coaches rather than quacks. So I do hope that all of us give that respect to Pradeep today. And whatever questions that you have later as we go along, I'll pass them on to Pradeep to answer. So as of now, Pradeep, leave the rest of the session to you as you speak. If there are any questions, I'll feed them back to you. Thank you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, sir, for that generous introduction. And you made my life easy by speaking on astrology so fluently and so aptly that I don't have to spend much time on explaining these nuances. We rarely come across an individual who knows so much about astrology. I mean, you're true that general public is exposed to what the columns that come in the newspapers, which is like kid stuff, and that's what the people believe the astrology is. But the actual fact is much more deeper, and we shall explore that in today's session. Well, having said that, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure spending the next hour and a half discussing with you all about astrology and the deeper insights that it provides into our lives. So let's get started. The session is divided into objective, subjective, and objective way. The first part will be introduced in a subjective manner, and then we will take it to the how do we analyze it objectively, and we see through a couple of horoscopes.
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Yeah. To start with, astrology is a body of a systematically developed body of doctrine, as Mr. Ram said, by our ancient seers, deep meditative insights, intuition, wisdom, and inquiries into nature with three purpose. That was to develop or establish order, harmony, and bliss. This was in order to avoid disorder, conflict, and chaos. They wanted to establish order, harmony, and bliss so that a human being who is born can meet the enlightenment or get the enlightenment. So to achieve this order, harmony, and bliss, they started the inquiries into the nature. And the first law and the first thing that they discovered was the universe was governed by certain laws, and the man was an offshoot of the universe that we are talking about, and both were subjected to the same laws. This was the first thing that they established, that there was an invisible counterpart to the human being, and human being was an offshoot of that. That invisible counterpart, in various cultures seen as in various ways, is what we call as God. The human being is an offshoot of him, and both are subjected to the same laws in the nature. So the everyday event of a human being and the society he lived in were worked out in great detail in order to establish the uniqueness of the individual. Because their deep meditative insights had shown that every human being had a divine spark latent in him, and each one had a unique strength in him. And to discover that uniqueness was very, very important for them. So that everyday life was studied in tandem with the society that he lived in. The first law that they discovered in this process was, wherever there was an objective present, there was a subjective past. This is a very important thing. Behind every objective manifestation, there's a veil of subjective past. There's a saying in a spiritual world that no amount of objectivity can mirror the subjective, which means the nature cannot be, or the God cannot be, the infinite cannot be explained through the finite language or finite words. The same thing holds true, the vice versa also. The human mind is such that no amount of subjective talk can actually drill down the knowledge into the human mind unless the objectively sees it. So this was done for the practical, the practical usage. So the next law that they were found out was things were rhythmical, circular, expansion, and dissolution in every phenomena. Nothing remained permanent in its form. It all changed. It all vanished. It all dissolved. It became, from an objective, it became again a subjective, and then it vanished into nothingness. So the creation, sustenance, and the destruction became or whatever the point that they discovered as a very key point, that nothing remained permanently in its form. This was a very important rule that they established. Then come the polarization that began, the forces that impinged on the human beings. The involutionary and the evolutionary impulses is what is called as. The involutionary impulse is something that is forced upon for the creation. The evolutionary impulses is something that is helping the creation evolve. For that, the three rock beds were the attributes that the philosophy discussed, or the Vedas discussed, were harmony, activity, and inertia. This is nothing but the sattva, rajas, and tamas. These attributes were further motivated to change under main basic four urges of human beings. These were the pillars of the society: the dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma is about the righteous actions. The artha is about the actions goal-oriented. Kama is desire-oriented actions. And the moksha is about the liberation that the individual craves for. So the attributes that they discovered, the sattva, tamas, and Rajas were motivated to change under this and cooperate for the individual to meet one of these urges of the human being. So there was a uniqueness, and there were the gunas, and there was a purpose to the individual, and one of the purposes were categorized under this. For this, the entire nature, the forces, evolutionary forces in the nature, help the individual meet one of the pillars or one of the purposes of life. This was, you can talk it in a layman language as God's blessing. The constellations that we talk about, the planets that we talk about, the actual nature, the elements that we talk about, everything came together to help the human being. They were not the causes of it. They were only helping the individual in the evolutionary process to meet his preordained destiny that he himself had agreed upon and came. Now this became the last point is, the karma and the reincarnation became the most fundamental planks of astrology. Reincarnation is nothing but again into flesh, and the karma is about the actions that the individual has done. Any action done, any fruit of that action, the individual has to bear it, whether it is a good action or whether it's not so positive action. Both needs to be borne by the individual. So the life that they discovered was only one bead in the long chain of incarnations. So the karma was further divided into 4 pieces. The Sanchita karma is where a group of karmas are already allotted for the individual of the actions that he has done. A portion of it is assigned to the present life. In that portion of the Sanchita karma assigned to the present life, there is a prarabdha that he has to go through as a second karma. Now imagine, a basket full of arrows as Sanchita karma. One arrow has already been shot, and that is the prarabdha karma that nobody can do anything about it. So that he has to endure. But was everything about fate? No. They gave in another karma. They discovered another karma that was about agami karma and kriyaman karma. The present life actions, the free will, was known as kriyaman karma. A portion of it went into the future karma, that is agami karma, and the portion of it went back to the Sanchita karma for the future life again. One, the kriyaman karma that he is doing, he has to endure some of the actions that he is doing in this life. The other piece, some of them goes back into the Sanchita karma piece. So as long as he's creating, is into actions, he's going on creating the cycle. So this was the basic structure at which the astrology was built in.
Pradeep, just one other thing, that the audience is global. Many of them may not be aware of all these Sanskrit words, gunas and karma and all that. So in very simple, neutral language, can you explain what these mean actually? When you talk about what is called gunas, the tamas, rajas and sattva, the harmony, activity and inertia, these are the basic natural qualities that is always present in each of us in some proportion, which makes us either very active, seeking a career or a profession, the doing state, whereas the sattva is more the being state, and tamas is actually probably a state of ignorance or
inertia,
caring, that kind of a stuff. So, so whatever you have said so far, and especially karma, one of the confusion that would happen to anybody, we have discussed it, that when you say preordained destiny, personally, I don't believe that there's anything called a preordained destiny. Everything is subject to free will as well. So it's a combination of both. There is a direction, but there are folks that we can choose. The whole of our life is a series of possibilities, is a series of potentialities. And
Correct.
within that, we can choose whatever. So when we use words like this, preordained destiny, it may confuse people a bit. So if you could just spend a little more time in explaining what this is before we move on further. Thank you.
Yeah. There is a, what I mean is when there is a portion of karma that is allotted, the free will works within that ambit of karma that he has to go through in the present life.
Mm-hmm.
That is where the segregation happens. For example, the arrow. Some of these arrows have been shot as a prarabdha. For example, you are born in a family. You can't choose which family that you are born with. So it's just preordained. You just born in that family, and you can't choose your parents. You can't choose your siblings, but you can choose to acquire wisdom to respond to the situations of life. That is the free will that is given. So here, the preordained destiny can be that you are born in a particular family to a particular sibling. The free will can be that you can choose your will, or you can, through your wisdom, to choose to the situation, or rather react to the situation that you are born with, or you can choose your partner as well with your will, and that is not
Pretty
preordained.
fair enough. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Somebody has asked, what about prarabdha? Prarabdha, I'm sorry, Payal, I would disagree with you. Prarabdha is not preordained destiny. Prarabdha is a kind of a purpose and meaning in life that we come to this world with. For example, if you, even from a scientific sense, if you look at it, we know that there's a part of our brain, the cerebellum, on top of our spine, which is called the reptilian brain, which stores the memories of long past. And I have worked with people, and I have been able to discover memories which come up from many, many generations ago. So whether you believe in reincarnation, or whether there is some kind of a continuity in terms of your evolution, the fact is that there is, from the time that we were reptilian, with just that part of the brain, which then developed into what is called the limbic brain, and from there into the frontal cortex. So there is a carryover. It's like the sperm and the eggs of your parents and your grandparents and so on. In some way, they left a genetic code within you, which is continuing. So if you want to explain it purely as a scientific principle, you can explain it from that way, instead of talking about karma and various other kinds of things.
We'll finish the presentation. We'll go through this, and then we'll take the questions.
Yeah, because they are getting confused a little bit. Because the question is, somebody is saying here, prarabdha is a preordained destiny, which I don't think it's quite correct. The prarabdha could be, that's a purpose with which we have come into this world, which is a background defined by, like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, the vasanas create what your future is. That's possibly true. But many of us do not care for the prarabdha, and therefore the destiny is not the way that that was planned, which then leads to unfortunate consequences. So we work on our program called Create Your Future is primarily about discovering the purpose and mission in life. What is it that you want to do? So you are in line with your prarabdha. And I totally get what you are saying, but for many of them, since it is new, for example, there's a very powerful and reasonably simple technique that if you do what is called a Trataka meditation, which is about awakening your third eye, you would be able to gain a knowledge about what you're destined to be. And I have worked with people, and this has been proven to be true. So I'm not disputing anything what Pradeep is saying, but I'm just saying that in order to explain it on a larger scale for people who may not be used to these terms, so that we get a full understanding of what it is.
Yeah, but we'll take the questions once we just finish this. In astrology, it's called Pratyaksha Shastra. That means that which is visible. So observer or an inquirer stood on the earth and observed, and that's where the apparent movement of planets is considered, where it's a geocentric observation, whereas the real astronomy is about heliocentric observation, where sun is in the middle. And the geocentric observation is what we, for the ease of speaking in astrology, we take it as a geocentric, where earth is in the middle where I am standing as an observer and observing the planets. This is where the calculation bit is done. So every being on Earth is influenced by the planets that the seers explained. The sun and the moon are considered as the luminaries. There are 5 planets: the Venus, Mercury, Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter. And they introduced a couple of shadowy planets, which they called as Chaya grahas or shadowy energies, which didn't have a form. They were mathematically sensitive points in the ecliptic, in the zodiacal belt, and they named it as Rahu Ketu, which the Western ones call it as north node of the moon and the south node of the moon. So this is the basic of it, and because since we are talking about the mind, we'll just skip the astronomy piece and we'll move forward. The coming to the point that Mr. Ram was talking about, the macrocosm. This was the the quintuplication is what we call the elements that are present in the nature. First, the knowledge that is given to us is nothing existed. Then the sound existed, and because of the ether, energy of the ether is the sound. The sound came from the word Om. This is more aware of somebody who has studied Vedas or somebody who has been exposed to the Hindu philosophy. The ether gave way to air, gave space to air, and the air moved. There is a movement that happened through air, and the movement created a friction. The friction created fire. The fire then gave way to evaporation, and then the earth, from the water to earth. This is the journey from very sukshma to stula, that is, finer to the gross. The pervasive theory is, or pervasive concept can be understood here. The ether is so fine element that it pervades into all other elements and it is present in everything. The air pervades into other 3 elements. The fire pervades into water and earth, and the water pervades into earth. So the earth has got all the elements, which is the grossest element that is possible, and the ether as the finer element pervades into everything. So this becomes the originator, and this becomes the creator, or sorry, the protector. So the originator and the protector, the father and the mother principle. The sky is considered as the father, the originator, and the earth is considered as the protector, the mother principle. So these macrocosm played a very big role in human being's life, as human being and its surroundings both are made out of elements. Whatever is there in the nature is there in the human body. I think you all must have gone through Ayurveda. The structural part of the human being, human body is made out of 5 elements. So this is where these 5 elements play a role, and we will see when practical demonstration come in how these 5 elements play a role in individual's life. Coming to the planetary attributes, as I said, that the entire cosmos was envisioned as one cosmic man, and the seer's wisdom, they explained it as sun as the soul of the cosmic man. The nature of it is termed as, in general, malefic. In the relationship, the sun represents the father in astrology, and the gender, they gave it as a male. So this is where the moon comes into picture. This is a luminary. The element that it represents is water. The mind or the consciousness factor of a human being is represented by this luminary moon. It's considered as general benefic because it's subject to whether it is strong or not. The individual will react, and it can, the relationship of it represents his mother. Likewise, all other planets have been given. This is just a basic which I have given. It runs into pages of what attributes and what are their natures. They are studied in detail to understand. Basically, when we talk about mind factor, we talk about moon. We talk about Mercury, which contains the intellect. Moon is the consciousness part of it. The sun is the soul part of it. I mean, it is like, it is who we really are. And many of the energies from the past lives have been stored in here. And the Jupiter, the wisdom part of it. The rest, you can see it. The Saturn represents the sorrow of the cosmic man. The Rahu Ketu represents the illusion, which they said, it's very difficult to read it. Anything can be very predictable, very unpredictable wherever they are getting associated with. This was the because they don't have form, wherever they get associated, they'll start acting like it, and it becomes very difficult to analyze the energies that they represent. So it represented the phobias and the depressions kind of a thing. Mars is on the physical side of the life, and the Sun, Moon, Mercury is on the conscious side of the life. The zodiacal belt was divided into 12 houses, 30 degrees each, and each of these houses represented a different aspect of human being's life. From a rising hemisphere to setting hemisphere, lower hemisphere, and an upper hemisphere, you can see it. Just to understand how it moves, sun's movement, we can understand. Sun rises in the east, the human being starts attending to the self in the morning, when it is, the most powerful aspect of the sun is, radiated in the morning. Then it moves on to the upper, it moves on in the afternoon. It becomes very powerful, where all the energy that contains in the human being is poured out in terms of action, is more, energetic, working, all kind of energy is drained out. Then as it sets in, the energy is moved towards the relationships. And then when it moves towards the nadir, where it's, it's in the lower hemisphere, the individual is more in the terms of, inner aspect, where he's dreaming or he's sleeping, he's connected to the different aspects of life. All other planets follow the same one. So the 1, 4, 7, 10 became these houses become the very important aspects in astrology. They are the pillars of the chart where a human being is raised. 1 is where the life begins. 10 is where his actions happen. 7 is where his relationships are controlled. And the 4 is where his thinking is there, where it is like, it's the hidden part of his life. The same view I want to talk about in a hexagon view of these 12 houses. In any creation that has to happen, it always happens in a triangular format. This is the knowledge that comes from the Vedas again. Any creation that is happening is through in a triangular format. The upward triangle is represented what we call as the trikonas, or the triangular houses in the horoscope, which is capable of producing auspicious results to the individual. This is the spiritual triangle of the man, which is capable of helping him go par all the difficulties that he will face. The energy, when the divine spark that comes in here, when the individual is born, gets polarized, and a portion of it gets 180 degrees right opposite to it, and goes in right opposite to the 7th house, what we call as the setting hemisphere. And as every energy moves in a triangular fashion, the energy that is remaining in the beginning of the life, where in the setting hemisphere, moves in a upward triangular fashion. This is for the creation. This is a spiritual triangle, and energy that a portion of energy that moves into the setting hemisphere moves in a downward pointing triangle. This is the material triangle. This aspect is also called as, the Shiva and the Shakti principle, the male and the female principle. This is the principle that shows that the creation happens through this. For that, the two pillars were given. One is the thinking pillar, and then another was the action that happens. This is an input and this is an output that happens. And these mysterious houses, 6, 8, and 12, that what we call as, they are this is where I was talking about the prarabdha is allotted to the individual. A karmic gun is given in this house or to this lord, where he just acts upon the actions of my past life. Is the gun just shoots wherever he is situated, and the individual has to face those actions. And these are mystery houses that are coming. The individual with this, the planets, if it is situated in this 159, the upward triangle helps individual penetrate these issues that are created by these dusthanas.
Can we go a little slow here, because I don't think, even I am totally confused.
Yeah.
When you talk about 1 and 12 and 11, I don't think we get an idea about what it is. So unless you explain that 1 refers to something, 9, 5.
I'll come back to that. I have another format which I am talking about.
If this is leaving people very confused. One of the questions asked is, what do you mean by energy moving in a triangular fashion? If you could address that, and if you could do it in a way that, people know that 1 refers to something, 5 or 9, and therefore how do they relate, please? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, see, if you look at that, everything, the 1 represents the beginning of life. Mm-hmm. So energy moves in a triangular fashion. The triangle is the first possibility of a dot moving in a linear fashion in an enclosed space. Okay, and if you look at this, every 5 houses it is jumping. It supports, this 5 is supposed to help the urge that is coming from the ascendant, and the 9 is supposed to be the blessing. I'll explain it in a better format next, where each house I will explain it.
Yeah.
So this is where the divine spark comes in. A spark gets polarized, the polarization that I was talking about. The counterpart of an individual is created here. The counterpart that goes into the material triangle, 1 creates a spiritual triangle, 1 creates a material triangle, and that's what I'm talking about here. Next slide, when I come in, I will actually explain those houses also much better. Okay. People can understand that. For now, I want everybody to understand that these are the angular houses 1, 4, 7, 10. They are the pillars of the horoscope, and this 1, 5, 9 are the ones that is where the past karma is allotted, or the past of the individual is seen in this 1, 5, 9, the spiritual triangle. This is where the past of the individual is seen. This is where the 12, 8, 6, the issues that may come in the present life because of this past karma is seen. Okay, and the 4 and 10 is where the individual battles it out in the present life, which I'll explain it in the later stages. Now, the Vedic knowledge and the astrological knowledge spoke about the consciousness being driven by 5 sense organs and 5 action organs. And the chariot is run on 3 attributes, that is sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are the sattva, rajas, and tamas are, it takes the consciousness where these sense organs and the action organs pushes the individual to. As long as the mind is not under control, the horses run in different directions and there is turbulence in the mind. So the the subjective knowledge tells or teaches us that the consciousness has to take control of the the sense organs and the action organs. This is the subjective knowledge. I think all of you can see the attributes. These are the three wheels on which, that when I say attributes, I mean sattva, rajas, and tamas, the harmony, the action oriented, and the inertia. They all, it works under the compulsion of these sense organs and the action organs, which we all know what are the action organs and the sense organs are. And they run in opposite directions and create a turbulence in the mind. This is where the problem in the consciousness of the person comes in. If the strength of the consciousness, if the strength of the mind is strong enough, he will be able to control the sense organs and the action organs. If it is not strong enough, then there is turbulence. But how do we see whether the individual has a strong mind or a weak mind, where it begins with a disadvantage or he begins with an advantage of that matter because of the various acts that he has done. The phases of moon, or which represents the mind, is seen as, if you see this as a sun, whenever a moon is moving away from the sun degreically, it's called waxing moon. It becomes strongest when it is right opposite 180 degrees from the sun. Whenever the moon is moving towards the sun, it's called the waning moon. The waning moon, the individual is already under a disadvantage of, the mind giving into the various phobias, fears. It's not strong enough. This is where I think the entire coaching perspective comes in, where an individual is, already having a weak mind and is subjected to various others energies that are not helping him. He tends to struggle with. But when an individual is already born with a strong mind and is not being impacted with any other problem, he's already on an advantageous position, which we are going to see it in a objective slide. The objective analysis, when we come to, now I'm going to present the houses in a very different fashion. I'm going to present it in a fashion where now we can understand. This is the beginning of the life. This is the horoscope of Mr. Ram. Basis the time and the date of birth, its precise calculation, latitude, longitude. It's 349 degrees. If we expunge 330 degrees out of this, we get 19 degrees 59 minutes as the ascendant. This is where leaving out the mathematical portion of it, this is where actually the birth of Mr. Ram has happened. The ascendant represents the beginning of the life essence. The mind of the person is kept in the 5th house from where he is born, and the preceptor or the god is kept 5th house from where the mind is born. They all form an auspicious triangle in the horoscope. Each of the houses represents the different aspects of the human being. Before we move into the horoscope, let's understand some of these zodiacal signs. The elements that we spoke about, fire, earth, and all that is mapped here. If you see the fire, earth, air, water, this is the Aries. This is where the sun apparent movement is in the northern area here, and this is where the life essence begins. This is the first point of what natural zodiac is. The 0 degrees starts from. The fire is the energy. The earth is the energy. It starts in a cyclical manner. The fire, earth, air, water, and fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water. All the planets are polarized in energies. So each of the polarized planets owns 2 houses. Jupiter owns these 2 houses, these 2 corners. Mercury owns these 2 corners. If you see, the sun and the moon are not polarized energies. They are luminaries. They are complete in its entity. And They don't own, they are not polarized energies, they're complete in its own. But each of the planets have a different, you know, you know, the different energies that are there, and they have a different job to do in terms of helping the individual. Wherever the even signs are there, they are considered as little negative side of it. Wherever there is odd sign is there, they consider the positive side of the planets. So there is movable, there is fixed. There are various attributes that we will learn from the of the zodiacal signs. Given that, coming back to the horoscope, we see that the Sun, Mercury, and the Moon forms the integrated personality of Mr. Ram. It's all fallen in the earthy signs. If you can note it here, the Earth, it's fallen in the Earth, in a Taurus. The sun represents the Mercury represents the intellect of Mr. Ram, and the Moon represents the mind of him, and the Sun represents the the soul of him. So this is where the integrated personality of Sun, Mercury, the Ram, Mr. Ram's matters. The planets that are posited here plays a very key role on the consciousness part of him. This is the this is where the creativity lies, and this is where the luck or the factor lies. These highlighted houses are the houses where the past energy or the past life comes in. For that, there are houses that represents the present life actions also. Like, for example, I said 1, 4, 10 are the pillars. These 4, this is the intelligence of him, this is the relationship of him, and this is the house where action of his or the profession of his comes in. Superficially we call it as profession. Is karma, the kriyaman karma that I was talking about, comes in here. Where I was talking about the prarabdha means the one that he has to endure in the present life is coming from the suffering and the enemies, or that is coming from this house. This is where the study of the prarabdha comes in. It comes in, falls in the house of his prowess. This comes and falls in the house of the prowess. What it means is a very different thing. When I was talking about the karma, this is what I was talking about. The next when we move in here, let's divide it into, let's divide the horoscope into fire, earth, and air, water. We see most of the energies falling in the earthy matter, especially his personality. Whatever that matters, the personality or the consciousness side of him falls in the earthy tattva, right? The 1, 2, 3, 4, all these are all earthy houses. Earth, every 5 houses repeats the same tattvas or the elements. Every 5 houses are the same, the elements here. So it represents the earth. The lower nature of it can be, in an earthy nature, can be order, stability that can come in, and the higher nature it will be to realize the inner potential because of the stability that comes in. The problem with the earthy nature is they tend to get attached. They don't want things to change because of the gravitational things like that. And when the changes are constant, when the changes come in, they tend to suffer. But whenever they get accustomed to the changes that come in, but they demonstrate tremendous amount of ability to dig in deep and bring out things. So this is the basic thing. So when we talked about the elements, this is where it comes into picture. So the body of Mr. Ram is rising in the watery. So the body the physical body or the appearance of him will be little bulkier. The water influences the body. This is what I was talking about. The physical body is made out of 5 elements, and the consciousness side of it, or this personality, is more towards earthy. Next level of understanding is the 3 attributes. How does these 3 attributes work? More so this chart is tilting towards, the attribute of Rajas, where action oriented is there, that the individual is taking initiatives, there is goal oriented, is not, lying dormant, but within the ambit of earthy element, is very, very active. So this is what we can see. So the initiation, growth, energy that can come in. When we talk about sattva, these are very difficult energies, because whatever that is already established, it tends to destroy, and it puts the harmony in place. So to bring in harmony, some already established behaviors have to get destroyed. So the rajas is where it takes a lot of initiatives. Tamas is where he concretizes what the initiatives that he has taken. So the horoscope, again, objective analysis moves towards the rajas. So is very earthy in nature. His personality is very earthy in nature, and he is goal oriented. Now let's move, like what we spoke about, the 4 pillars of life that we spoke. The fire represented the right, the righteous action, the dharma, and it is mapped as dharma, artha, kama, moksha. The dharma starts from the fire, the earthy is of the artha, the goal oriented, and the kama is the desire oriented, where the air quality is taken and the water is little, given into detachment. The moksha, it comes in. Now if you look at his horoscope here, if you map it here, the most of the energies, or especially his sun, moon, Mercury, which works on, the consciousness side of him, lies in the artha, where he is, supposed to generate money. Is, goal oriented activities. His purpose of life is to generate money to the society, being within the ambit of earthy nature, with having a rajas quality, with having artha as the main purpose of life. This is what his horoscope stands for, where he's supposed to be the support system in the society, generating money and helping individuals, discover their own, which is the very earthy in nature. So for that, this ascendant plays a very big role. This is where the urge, or a main purpose, or a possibilities is stored. This is the car the which he has been given, and there is a driver that has been given. This is ruled by the Jupiter, the preceptor himself. It is placed in the house where, let me show it. This is placed in a house where it is secret, mystery is there. So the individual by birth is having an urge to see the unknown, to see the unseen, to explore many things. This is where the urge comes in. The urge reaches the mind. This is where the mind factor is there, whereas creativity mind factor is there. All his thoughts and ideas takes a form here. Now all he needs is an expressive tool for that creation, and the profit that he makes, or a field where his creativity is shown. This is the time cycle. This is the exclusive part of the astrology, where you can see what are the energies that will grip him at what years, and how is he going to benefit, how is he going to react. If you can look at this from the age of 53 to 72, must have been very decisive in him, because this is in the house of mind, house of creativity. This is a very restrictive, constrictive energy, and it is casting its eye on the mind of this person, on the consciousness of the person. So the individual must have gone through tremendous amount of asceticism during this time. So this is how you see it, that various phases of the mind that he goes through, various stages that he goes through, but ultimately the destiny has led him to where he's supposed to generate money, and he's back to what the energies dictate in the horoscope. He's picked up the knowledge, he's picked up everything, but the knowledge that he has picked up is generating the money. So next, let's see one more one. the exclusive, in astrology, that one of the points in astrology is that human being functions at a different planes of existence. Some are at a physical plane, the mind is at the physical plane, the mind is at the emotional plane, intellectual plane, and a higher plane. If you look at this, the horoscope of this female, the mind factor is with the fear, phobia kind of an energy. The moon is moving away from the sun, so it is gaining in strength, and it is in its own house, which means it has its kind of strength, but it is gripped by the fear energy that it is there. So the real personality, the consciousness aspect of the individual will be suffering when the individual reaches this stage of the life, between the 36 and the 46. This is where the individual needs awareness of where she stands, the awareness of how what is happening to her. Is the fear real? Is the phobia real? What is she got? This is where an astrologer or a coach plays a role. The latent quality, wherever the greens I have put is where the luck houses or the positive houses that are there. The consciousness part of this is quite safe. It's only the mind factor that is, taking a beating. If you look at this air, the ascendant is our basic personality. This is the intellect where it is. The intellect is quite safe. It is not gotten, damaged in any which way, but it is the mind factor that is suffering in. Once the person understands the root cause of what is causing her the problem, what is causing her this fear, she's going to create a very different future for herself. Both the horoscopes that I have shown is into coaching. So this person is very creative in nature. Now she's a painter, the singer. All that will happen once she understands and overcomes the fear. Now this is where the coaching comes into picture, where the phobia, if she start understanding the phobia that it is written in the mind, so she'll start working on the real cause of why it has happened, the real nature of how she can endure this kind of a problem and move on. So it actually plays a very big role during the age of 36 and 46 years. Next point that comes in is the reflective consciousness. Generally, the difficult periods are seen where some arrows are shot and it's very paining and the individual is suffering. But astrology sees it in a very different way. The individual is already born with the attachments. The individual is already with these arrows, and when the arrows that are removed out of the flesh, it must pain. The attachments are removed, it must pain, and the individual will go through the pain, the sorrow. But it is setting it right that reflective consciousness will make him reflect on it, on its own abilities, on its own this thing, and will put him on a path of enlightenment. And finally, when we comes it the placidity of the mind, this is where everything matters. As long as the mind is placid, as long as the mind is stable, the reflective the mind, the consciousness is a reflective agent. As long as it is stable, it can reflect the divine message that it is getting. When it is not stable, the individual tends to suffer. So if you look at this, the individual has to move towards the wisdom. It doesn't have the support, the coach or the astrology as a part of the knowledge that comes in as a support system to the individual, where he gets in as a bridge, he moves in. I think Mr. Ram talks about the mindlessness. This is where it matters a lot, the mind becoming stable, placid. It's only the placid mind that can reflect the actual message that it has for the individual, and he will be able to cross the the turbulent waters of life and move towards the enlightenment. So this is about it. I will take the questions. I might have rushed through. I'll answer whatever the questions that are there to the best of my abilities. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, Pradeep, a number of questions.
Yeah.
I mean, there is still, I don't know, some people who are probably knowledgeable about the astrology, Divakar and others talking about, okay, your time at which you are born depends, makes it how much of free will that you have. Personally, I don't believe that. Anyway, that is something that you can answer. Maybe how you would implement it, like you said, in somebody's horoscope, there is a fear, there's an insecurity, and therefore, because of that, they may not be willing to exercise that much of free will. Someone who is probably more confident will exercise it more. That's one question. And yeah, let's start with that. And in the meantime, I'll try and see what other questions come up. The free will versus no free will or destiny is something which will be important for most people.
Correct. I mean, as I was talking about, it's all the astrology doesn't talk about any dogmatic injunctions that completely everything is fate, and you sit back. Whether there is a problem, it is going to hit you and it is going to destroy you, or it is very good, so it's going to uplift you even if you don't do anything. It's nothing about that. As I said, the family that I'm born in, I don't have a say, but the knowledge I can pick up, where I was talking about a female horoscope, where she's aware of what she's born with the phobia. She's aware that some of the things that are multiplying in nature are not in positive way, which will help her. That is of her prarabdha that she's facing. But nothing is stopping her from acquiring the wisdom for choosing to the situation or reacting to the situation wisely, differently when she picks up this, and exercising a free will, where she actually reacts in a very, very different manner than she would have reacted when she's not aware of what it is. This is one of the things that being aware of the actual situation is the first remedy that the individual has already got from the prarabdha karma. If you are not aware of who you are and what it is already present, then you are only shooting in the dark.
Okay, so in a way, would it be correct to say that the horoscope is kind of a blueprint based on the time that you are born in the location? And that blueprint gives an indication about your potential.
Correct.
But your performance in respect of that potential is pretty much in your hands. How do you manage that potential?
Well, it is if I understand the question of what you have asked, there is a certain amount of difficulty that has already individual is facing. How can he exercise his free will to, or how can he use his potential to overcome it? Is that my understanding?
Okay, now let me rephrase it. We all have, like in the beginning you said, we are all divine. We have a spark of divinity in us.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we have, in a way, an unlimited potential, because the universal has the unlimited potentiality. And we, as a hologramic part of it, we are able to access a part of it. However, there are interferences, whether you call it difficulties, internal or external.
Yeah.
And how we respond to those determines how we are able to move forward towards that potential in terms of our actual performance.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, in a sense, we may all have the potential to become a Bill Gates, but from a horoscopic condition as well, there could be some behavioral constraints that are seen, which may not lead each one of us to that level. But if not to the Bill Gates level, at least to a satisfactory level if we wish to go. what I'm looking at is, as a coach, our job is primarily to try and see people achieve their potential.
Yes.
Like in this particular case, you said that person has the potential to be a good singer, a good artist, and so on and so forth. There is something that is holding her back. So without even an astrological background, the work that a coach will try and see to do is, can we make her aware of what is that underlying interference of fear?
Yeah.
So
If you
astrology, what you are saying is astrology can help in discovering what that possible interference is. Am I getting it correct?
Correct. Yeah. So if a coach can get into the root cause of what the fear is,
Yeah.
and if a consultee gets that and understands the realistic situation of where she is, then she's on it.
Yeah.
Here, the astrologer is in a very advantageous position of immediately knowing what is gripping her mind. But a coach has to work on it for quite a long time, for multiple sessions. For example, to crack your mind, because it's in an earthy nature, it's very difficult. But to crack the girl's mind that I showed becomes easier because it's in a watery nature. But a coach also has to have a knowledge of what is the root cause of the fear. Fear is not the root cause. The astrology talks about, or the Vedas talk about, the fear. The root cause of fear is attachment, a strong desire for something. If an individual discovers that that there is a strong attachment or a strong desire for something which is giving rise to the fear, the phobia, which is not allowing her personality to blossom, then the individual will not actually explore the creativity in her. It's not, she will reduce to the mundane activities that the life pushes in. But in the case that I showed him, as soon as the individual discovered the latent quality that is there in her, because she knows that in a realistic term she's not going to become a Bill Gates, but her uniqueness is in the creative fashion, she started tapping the resources or the latent quality that is there in him. And now she's working on an emotional plane, she's working on an intellectual plane. She's also one of the coaches, life coaches, who is actually training people now. All that happened after being aware of the realistic condition that she's born in.
Right. Brilliant. So two things. One is, you are absolutely right. Even from a strong psychological background, Jungian and Freudian, fear and desire are the two mirror images.
Yeah.
The desire creates the fear of losing what you get, and so it keeps repeating. Even Buddha says the same thing. So you are absolutely right. The root cause is really desire. The fear is, in a sense of, if we get what we want, or if we don't get, the fear of that is what really the fear. So one of the questions that is asked, and therefore to answer some of the other questions that have been there, is if you have some knowledge about astrology, one would be able to better divine what those unconscious belief systems are within that person based on the planetary positions or whatever, and that might be able to help the person. Yeah. So the question that has been asked is, can you explain what the houses represents one again, spiritual triangle versus material triangle, etc., which you said the 1, 5 and 9, whatever.
Yeah. The spiritual triangle represents the energies that I've already created in the past, or the karma that I've already created in the past, the action that I've already created in the past. The the material triangle represents that which is going to bind me in the householder, which will bind me in the householder. The spiritual triangle is the one that will help me transcend all these things and move into a higher being. To explore the higher divine essence in me, the spiritual triangular houses are very important. To explore the raw desires in me, where all sorts of materialistic desires that come in, these materialistic triangles are very important. That's the houses that we were discussing.
Okay, so somebody also earlier asked about, you talked about the lower level and the higher level.
Correct.
And so the lower is like what you said, the householder, the grahastha's transactional needs, whereas the higher level, the spiritual towards others.
Correct. Yes.
And also there were some questions about the moving and the fixed
Yes.
versus the odd and the even. The moving and
Yes.
fixed, I guess, are related
Yes.
to the elements. The odd and
Yes.
even, you said, is related to the planets. So
Correct.
what exactly do they mean? Yeah.
If you actually look at in your horoscope, if let's say a client is sitting next to you, all the consciousness part of it, the intellect part of it, the mind part of it is a fixed in nature. You're going to take much more time in cracking him out or making him realize, but because he doesn't want change, he's refusing to change. But if you look at it in a watery sign or an airy sign where there is movement, where there's swift change, he's willing to explore things, he's willing to change things, he's already ready, provided his mind is strong and whatever the latent quality that you're going to give him. But an earthy nature person will tend to suffer. I mean, he doesn't want change. He's not refusing. He's refusing. He's already attached to some things. So that's where the fixed and the movable nature comes in. Whereas this comes for a dual nature, is always confused which one to pick. Now he needs more hand-holding from a coach. I'm sure you all must be having a different technique to teach them how to resolve a conflict. One day he wants this, other day he wants it. It becomes very unstable emotions.
Okay. So let me try and, most of the questions have been answered. Let me try and wrap it up this way, Pradeep, is that, one of the reasons why we are opening up these subjects is, for example, a coach need not be a psychologist. The coach need not be necessarily trained in neurolinguistic programming or something else. But all these knowledge helps in some way in terms of doing what we do better, especially in terms of the understanding of what is not visible, the unconscious beliefs, the subconscious beliefs, what is holding us back, what is driving us forward. So what you have explained is, leaving aside the technicalities, which are obviously difficult in a 1-hour presentation to convey, is that there is a possibility that by looking at the planetary positions, there is reasonable evidence. I know that there is scientific evidence in terms of documented evidence, which is available, that it is possible to understand the behavior and what is underlying the mind's perceptions, the values and beliefs through the horoscope, which then the coach can use to work with the client to understand, just like the way that we use psychometric tests. It is, I would probably look at using horoscope, something like a psychometric test, which everybody believes in and they don't mind spending hundreds and thousands of dollars for those. But if you say it as a horoscope, it doesn't sound quite right. So I'm hoping that we could place horoscope at the same level as a psychometric test, probably a more reliable psychometric test, to be able to understand where people are coming from. That's the whole idea. But,
I'm sorry, I am told that amongst all the intellectual groups, the coaching community is the most open to all the ideas, because they are non-judgmental and they are just the way
they should be, Pradeep.
Yeah. So the way they are coached or where they are trained is to not to judge the client, and so every bit of knowledge that is there can be used. If you see the famous psychiatrist, the Carl Jung, used that, what he said was, what I could not find out to the stethoscope, I found out to the horoscope, which immediately. So a psychiatrist goes through many periods of consultations to identify human mind, problem in the human mind. The horoscope reveals in a very, within, no matter, provided those principles are understood properly and provided it's used in a constructive manner to coach the person to pick up the right channels. If you look at both the horoscopes, the way you see it, the way I see it in your horoscope, if you stand it in a spiritual angle, it's a karmic fault where an individual is pushed towards the materialism. But if you stand on the materialistic side, it provides all the kind of impetus to grow. And if you are the personality has blossomed very early. If you look at the girl's horoscope, she's going to achieve very significantly something different in the coming days with the creative potential that is blossoming in her. All that you have to do is make the person see inside.
and the understanding of what is blocking her.
Exactly.
So just to interrupt you, Pradeep, if you can take a minute to put down your link or whatever it is so that people can, your email or something, so they can connect with you directly. There are several of them who said they would be interested in knowing where to learn astrology from. Since you are doing some online classes, can you just go to the chat box?
Yeah.
You have access to the chat box. Just open the chat box.
Yeah.
And make sure that you get all panelists and attendees.
Yeah, I can share my email ID.
Yeah, you can share your email ID. Okay, so for some of the other questions, yeah, the time of birth is very, very necessary, as close as possible, and the location as well, because it's based on the latitude
Correct.
as well. And yeah, Manish, you're right. I'm not quite sure about whether Western academia may not accept it today. More and more, there is an acceptance. It all depends on statistical reliability. The problem is that in the Eastern world, we have not really gotten used to documenting evidence to show between cause and effect, to show this is what is happening. The more that happens, like what Pradeep is talking about, publishing articles saying this is what is happening, this is what it is, and this is what people gain, and there is sufficient evidence, I think people will start believing, because you are talking about ultimately, if Hogan or somebody says, you can go with me with 99% confidence, as with somebody else, it may not be as much. People go on those kind of published figures of statistical figures. So the problem is that if you go to a roadside astrologer, it's like tossing a coin. It makes no damn difference. It's a 50-50 kind of a chance that you take. But if you go to a professional who understand what he is doing, like for example, Ekta here is specialized in it, and Pradeep, there are many others amongst you, I'm sure you do. I didn't pursue it because I didn't think that really I would be very good at it, despite the fact
well, the girl's horoscope that I showed,
yeah.
She actually took pains to understand astrology. She's learning astrology herself. The best way to learn know astrological benefits is to learn yourself.
Absolutely, totally. I completely 100% agree with you. So let's hope that there is greater interest in this space, and we would be quite happy to engage with Pradeep and help you with that. But you already have his email ID. But if you need any more help, do let us know.
I have shared my mobile number as well,
yeah.
So
Please
I can share my
to connect with him. Yeah, Manish. I mean, see, the point is, yeah, as long as we do it rationally to some extent, without getting carried away by superstitions and beliefs. Like I'm sure, I don't know, somebody asked about parihara. I personally don't believe in any parihara. Okay, so the jewelers and the priests make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Nobody else does. Nobody else benefits. But the parihara, for those who are not familiar with the Sanskrit word, is what do you call it? A correction, in a sense, a retribution that you do. And if you truly feel that you have done something wrong, and you learn you don't do it again, and you try and correct what you have done wrong, I think that is probably the best compensation that you can make, and the correction that you can make. It doesn't help if you just go to a confession and do the same thing over again. Okay, thanks a lot. Take care. And Pradeep, thank you very, very much. I think the 1 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes is not really enough for going into details.
Yeah.
But hopefully people will get in touch with you. And if they connect with me, I'll let you know. Thank you once again.
Sir, I think most of them are not getting my email ID and this thing. I will share it with you personally.
Yeah. So yeah, you can let me know, or you can let Magda know. I'm not unable to see. What is it, Pradeep? Yeah, let me post it again.
I think it's posted now, sir. I think it's posted now.
Yeah.
My friend has posted now.
Yeah, several people have posted it.
Yeah.
It is Pradeep ICAS 15, right?
Yeah, at gmail.com.
Yeah, at gmail.com. Yeah. So here's okay, guys. Take care. All the best. Thank you very much, Pradeep. Thank you for
Thank you all.
dedicated session. Thank you. Bye.